They were all watching him speak. Calm, confident, almost untouchable. His voice never shook. His story never paused. Every sentence sounded rehearsed, polished, airtight. This was a man who had learned how to lie without blinking, the kind of lie that doesn't rush, doesn't stutter, doesn't beg to be believed. It simply expects obedience. The room leaned in, not because they trusted him, but because power has a way of demanding attention even when it's dishonest. Then someone interrupted him. Not with anger, not with accusations, just a question. Simple, quiet, so precise it sliced straight through the performance. The liar smiled and answered easily, but then came the second question, even calmer, even shorter. And that's when the room changed. The air thickened, the confidence cracked. For the first time, his words began chasing each other, tripping over details that no longer lined up. The silence wasn't awkward, it was devastating. Because everyone in that room felt it at the same time. The lie had been exposed, not by shouting, not by evidence stacked high like a courtroom drama, but by two questions so clean they left nowhere to hide. No escape routes, no emotional distractions, just truth standing still while deception collapsed under its own weight. This is the moment most people miss. We're taught that catching a lie requires aggression, facts, rage, or authority, that you have to overpower deception with volume. But history tells a very different story. One written by men who understood power, restraint, and human psychology at a level most modern debates never reach. Centuries ago, a voice carried this lesson across battlefields and broken colonies. George Washington didn't believe truth needed theatrics. He believed lies destroy themselves when gently cornered. He understood that a liar's greatest weakness is not exposure, but consistency, and that the calmest person in the room always controls the outcome. This is not about embarrassing someone or winning a cheap argument. It's about dignity, about self-respect, about realizing that truth does not shout to be heard. It waits, patient and unafraid, knowing deception always rushes and always overreaches in the end. Those two questions still exist today, waiting to be used by anyone willing to stay calm when others get loud, steady when others perform, and grounded when others manipulate. That knowledge alone shifts the balance of power, and once you feel it, you never forget it again, forever inside yourself. But Washington didn't learn this in comfort. He learned it in moments where lies could cost lives. A lie is never small. It doesn't stay where it's spoken. It spreads. It seeps into decisions, into trust, into identity itself. Empires have collapsed not because they lacked weapons, but because they believed the wrong words. Families have fractured not because of poverty or distance, but because one deception was allowed to sit unchallenged. Lies are not mistakes, they are weapons, quiet at first, devastating over time. In politics, lies rewrite reality. They turn corruption into patriotism, cruelty into strength, exclusion into pride. Loud voices repeat them until repetition pretends to be truth. Media spin wraps them in graphics and slogans, training people to react instead of think. And the more aggressive the delivery, the more power the lie seems to hold. That illusion has destroyed more futures than any enemy ever could. But truth operates differently. Truth doesn't rush. It doesn't need applause or outrage to survive. It's fragile only when ignored, only when people are taught to fear asking simple questions. Used correctly, truth is unstoppable because it doesn't have to invent anything. It only has to remain consistent. That's why lies hate calm. That's why arrogance panics in silence. Everyday manipulation works the same way, in workplaces, relationships, interviews, debates. The liar performs, the truth holder listens, and most people never realize that the loudest person in the room is usually the most afraid of being examined too closely. Lies depend on distraction, truth depends on clarity. When lies go unanswered, they quietly teach people to doubt themselves until obedience feels safer than truth, and confusion replaces confidence across an entire society over time. This is the real danger, not that lies exist, but that people stop believing they can challenge them without becoming cruel themselves. That dignity must be sacrificed to confront deception, that silence means weakness. History proves the opposite. And this is exactly why Washington's method terrified liars, because it left them nowhere to run. Every liar believes they are the smartest person in the room. That belief is their armor, and also their curse. Deception does not survive on facts or truth. It survives on confidence, on tone, on performance. A liar speaks quickly when challenged, not because they know more, but because they are afraid of silence. Silence gives people time to think, and thinking is dangerous to a fabricated story. The first move in the liar's playbook is emotional aggression. They raise their voice, sharpen their language, inject outrage into the moment, not to convince, but to overwhelm. If they can make the listener defensive, angry, or insecure, the focus shifts away from the lie itself. Emotion becomes smoke, and the truth disappears behind it. The second move is complexity. Liars love details, but not clarity. They stack explanations, dates, names, and side stories like a wall, not because those details matter, but because complexity exhausts people. Most listeners give up before they reach the contradiction. The liar counts on that fatigue. They rely on the assumption that no one will slow down long enough to untangle the mess. Then comes ego. Every liar wants to be admired. They posture as experts, patriots, victims, or saviors. Their identity becomes fused with the lie itself. That's why challenges feel personal. When questioned, they don't defend the facts, they defend themselves. The louder the ego, the weaker the foundation underneath. But beneath the confidence is fear. Fear of simple questions, fear of repetition, fear of being asked to explain the same thing twice, the same way, because lies are built forward, not inward. They move ahead without checking consistency. Truth circles back on itself effortlessly. Lies cannot survive that loop. This is where the contradiction lives. The liar demands trust, but avoids scrutiny. They crave attention, but panic under precision. They want control, but lose it the moment the pace slows. Their greatest enemy is not exposure, but calm curiosity. Watch closely, and the pattern never changes. When challenged gently, the liar becomes defensive. When pressed softly, they become aggressive. When asked to clarify, they accuse. Every move is reactive, every answer slightly off from the last. The chessboard fills with unnecessary moves, each one revealing more than intended. This is why deception often looks powerful at first. It dominates early exchanges, it intimidates, it performs, but it cannot endure. The longer the game continues, the more the liar must remember, protect, and defend. The weight grows heavier with every sentence spoken. And this is the secret liars never accept. They believe truth is fragile because it doesn't perform. They believe silence is weakness. They believe restraint signals defeat. They never realize that the calm player is already winning, waiting patiently for the moment when the liar collapses under their own noise. But Washington understood something liars never do. George Washington did not command truth because of a title. He earned it through restraint when others chased glory, through discipline when chaos tempted shortcuts, and through consistency when power offered excuses. In moments where fear ruled the room, he slowed his breath. In moments where anger promised applause, he chose silence. That kind of leadership trains the mind to see clearly, even when deception dresses itself in confidence. Washington led men who were hungry, frightened, and outnumbered. He negotiated with allies who smiled politely while hiding their own agendas. He listened to promises that sounded patriotic but collapsed under pressure. Over time, he learned something brutal and invaluable. Lies don't reveal themselves to force. They reveal themselves to patience, to leaders who don't need to dominate a conversation to control it. His moral authority came from alignment. His private discipline matched his public words. His sacrifices mirrored his speeches. That alignment created trust so deep that even his enemies listened carefully when he spoke, not because he threatened them, but because he never wasted words. When Washington questioned something, it was never impulsive, it was deliberate, and people felt the difference immediately. This is how his life trained him to recognize deception. In war councils, a single inconsistent detail could cost lives. In diplomacy, an emotional outburst could destroy fragile alliances. Calm was not a personality trait, it was survival. Precision was not politeness, it was strategy. And history remembers what followed next. So when Washington spoke about lies, he didn't preach, he simplified. He reduced chaos into clarity. He understood that truth does not compete on volume or emotion. It waits for the right moment, then asks exactly what needs to be asked. And when Washington spoke about lies, he reduced the entire battle to just 2 questions. Most people think exposing a lie requires intelligence, preparation, and proof stacked high like a courtroom table. So they argue harder, they interrupt, they bring documents, screenshots, timelines, voices raised and tempers flaring. And without realizing it, they step directly into liars' territory. Because lies thrive in chaos. They love speed. They depend on emotional noise to stay alive. This is the trap. When you argue a liar aggressively, you reward them. You give them exactly what they want, momentum. Every accusation lets them pivot. Every new fact gives them another surface to escape onto. The more complex your attack becomes, the safer their lie feels. Not because it's strong, but because you're chasing it instead of cornering it. Washington understood that most people lose not because they are wrong, but because they ask the wrong questions. They ask questions that invite speeches instead of clarity, questions that allow emotion instead of consistency, questions that let the liar perform instead of explain. And liars depend on this mistake more than anything else. Complex lies are built outward. They stack details like scaffolding, hoping no one checks the foundation. Simplicity does the opposite. It removes the scaffolding. It slows the pace. It forces repetition. And repetition is where deception collapses, because lies are not designed to be revisited calmly. They are designed to move forward quickly. This is the moment where most people feel uncomfortable. Silence stretches. The urge to argue fades. Control shifts from the loudest voice to the calmest presence. And suddenly you realize something unsettling and empowering. You've been playing the liar's game all along. Washington changed the game by refusing to rush. He didn't overwhelm. He simplified. He waited. And in that stillness, the liar had nowhere to hide. Then Washington delivers the first question, and everything shifts. George Washington never raised his voice to catch a lie. He lowered it. He waited. And then he asked the first question, the one that sounds harmless but changes everything. Can you explain that again, the same way? No accusation, no edge, just repetition. The liar agrees easily, confident at first, repeating the story with familiar rhythm. But subtle shifts appear. A date moves, a reason changes, a detail quietly disappears. Consistency begins to crack, and the room feels it before it understands it. The first question doesn't attack the lie, it invites it to walk in a circle. Truth walks comfortably, lies stumble. You can see it in the eyes, in the rushed corrections, in the unnecessary additions meant to cover the gaps. This is where confidence thins, not because anyone shouted, but because the story can't survive being retraced calmly. Then Washington delivers the second question. This one doesn't target facts, it targets motive. Why would this benefit you? The liar freezes, because now the performance has nowhere to hide. Anger won't help, complexity won't save them. Motive demands honesty, and honesty was never part of the plan. The answer comes late, defensive, padded with emotion instead of logic. This is the moment everything collapses. The audience doesn't need proof anymore. They feel it. Watch his face. He knows it's over. The lie didn't fall apart because it was attacked. It fell apart because it was examined without fear. Calm truth stands still, while loud deception collapses under its own weight. Washington understood that power isn't about domination, it's about patience. Two questions, no theatrics, no cruelty, just clarity doing what it always does when given space. And what followed after this quiet collapse sent ripples far beyond the room, reaching crowds, commentators, and the line collapses, it doesn't explode, it evaporates. It doesn't cheat, it goes quiet. Awkward silence, recognition. People exchange looks. They sit back. Respect shifts without anyone announcing it. The liar doesn't storm out or admit defeat. They shrink. Their certainty dissolves, and everyone feels the transfer of power without a single word spoken. That moment never stays contained. It spreads. Someone clips it. Someone re-watches it. Someone realizes they've seen this pattern before, in debates, in interviews, in meetings, in relationships. Calm questions, rushed answers, confidence giving way to defensiveness. Suddenly, people recognize the signs. They stop being impressed by volume and start listening for consistency. Online, the reaction is instant. Comments don't praise aggression, they praise restraint. They don't celebrate humiliation, they admire composure. Notice how he never raised his voice. That pause said everything. This is how you expose a lie without becoming one. The lie becomes a reference point, not a hero. A cautionary tale, a play whenever arrogance mistakes noise for truth. This is where validation settles in. Heroes don't feel angry, they feel stable, smart, grounded. They realize they don't need to out-talk anyone to protect their dignity. They don't need to abandon their values to confront deception. They can stay calm, ask clearly, and let reality do the work. In politics, this lesson matters more than ever. In media, it cuts through spin. In personal life, it preserves self-respect. Truth stops being something fragile and becomes something practiced, a skill, a posture, a quiet form of strength anyone can learn. But Washington's lesson wasn't about winning arguments. It was about something deeper, something that still challenges us to this day. It asks whether we value dignity over dominance, and whether truth still matters when no one is forcing it forward. The lie has fallen, the moon has settled, and in that quiet, a lesson emerges louder than any shout can ever make it. Truth does not compete with value. It does not need anger. It does not demand cruelty. Its power lies in patience, in clarity, in moral courage. Washington showed that dignity is not a passive function. It is the sharpest weapon in a world that rewards noise and sense. Confrontation is not about overpowering anybody. It is about mastering himself. It is about standing firm while others flail, remaining consistent while others stumble, and refusing to compromise principle for temporary victory. That calm authority reshapes the room, the argument, and the audience, transforming fear into respect, chaos into clarity. This lesson is timeless. In debates, in workplaces, in homes, and in politics, those who wield restraint with purpose carry more influence than the loudest voices. Justice is measured not in volume, but in fairness. Leadership is proven not in attacks, but in the ability to illuminate truth calmly. And Americanness, at its best, is the courage to face falsehoods without losing identity, dignity, or empathy. Every viewer watching this moment can feel it. Quiet strength surpasses loud lies. Patience overpowers panic. Integrity outlasts deception. It is a call to act with awareness, to speak with purpose, and to confront the world not by mimicking aggression, but by embodying calm, unwavering truth. When we carry this lesson forward, we are not just witnessing history, we are participating in it. We learn that morality, clarity, and courage are not abstract ideals, but practical tools. And in that realization, the audience leaves inspired, ready to recognize lies, uphold dignity, and embrace the quiet power that shapes every meaningful victory.
The truth is simple, but its power is profound. Just 2 questions, calm, precise, deliberate, can expose lies that arrogance and noise try to hide. George Washington's wisdom isn't just history, it's a guide for today, a tool for anyone who values dignity, clarity, and integrity. Carry this lesson forward. Notice deception without anger. Respond without aggression. Ask the right questions and watch how clarity always finds its way. Share this wisdom with others. Live it in debates, conversations, and moments where truth matters most. Recognize lies without becoming one, and in doing so, preserve your own strength and self-respect. Subscribe to learn more ways to wield patience and insight as your greatest power. Share this story. Be part of a movement that chooses calm, thoughtful truth over noise and arrogance. Your actions, your questions, your integrity, they ripple farther than you realize.